Welcome back to Upside Down Data. Let's talk about Uniswap and what the election might do for its prospects, as well as for the prospects of DeFi in general. Okay, so why are we talking about Uniswap here? Well, I think there's some interesting reasons. So obviously the election has happened, Trump has won. And of course, for crypto, the reason that's relevant is that Trump was the candidate who was certainly much more likely to loosen the regulatory pressure on crypto relative to Harris. Trump has come out as very much being the pro-crypto candidate. It's therefore reasonable to think that leadership over at the SEC, for example, is likely to change. And what that means is that all of these efforts that the SEC has been doing to try to basically attack different crypto projects like Uniswap. The SEC gave Uniswap a Wells notice, basically that they were intending to sue them, and even looked like it might go after investors in Uniswap as well, really ratcheting up the pressure there. Well, suddenly with a Trump victory, it's likely that Gary Gensler is going to be out at the SEC and someone much more lenient is probably going to come in. And so it's no surprise that Uniswap is up now about 40% ever since the election was decided. Now, to explain a little bit more about the reasoning of why Uniswap went crazy, I'm actually going to let Pass Me explain it. So this is actually a video I put out to our Polarity Digital Pro subscribers back on Monday, so before the election, laying out why I thought Uniswap could be one of the assets that could go crazy if Trump won the election. For example, just to kind of give an example of the altcoins that can maybe really benefit under a Trump victory, is something like Uniswap. Uniswap got a Wells notice from the SEC, a lot of regulatory pressure for them. And there's a lot of things that Uniswap has wanted to do that are a bit securities-like. They want to, for example, give part of their revenue from fees to Uni token holders. That's not been a thing they've been eager to do because, of course, of the regulatory pressure. But under a Trump administration, maybe they just go ahead and flip that switch. Suddenly, the Uniswap token going from a kind of useless governance token to a yield-bearing asset looks a lot more approachable for different investors, a lot more attractive. And so you might really see something like Uniswap go crazy. All right, so I'll cut it off there, but that's really the rationale behind this, that assets like Uniswap have tools at their disposal they've been afraid to use because of regulatory pressure, and that's really seems to be why we're seeing the movement we're seeing right now. Basically, the market is now pricing in the possibility of Uniswap starting to do some of those more adventurous things without having to worry about the regulatory crackdown that could happen, that certainly would have happened if Gary Gensler were to have remained, or someone like him were to have remained in the lead at the SEC. And so we're seeing this kind of release right now. And this is not just Uniswap. This is also really across a lot of DeFi projects. We're seeing this. And I really think DeFi is an area that could benefit mightily in the coming weeks to months as Trump is gearing up to take over as president. And then as we see that real changing regulatory landscape take hold. So that's where we stand from kind of that perspective, the election and what it means from a broader kind of more narrative perspective. I also want to talk a bit about some of our models and what they're seeing with Uniswap to see how much room does it have to move? What are the data suggesting could happen with this move? So let's go ahead and get into it. So the first model I want to talk about, this is over at our website, polaritydigital.io. Link is in the description if you want to check that out. This is our long-term upside downside potential indicator. So it's one of our risk models that we have here at the channel. Higher values mean higher risk, lower values mean lower risk. You can see this has done a very good job of identifying these low risk points in Uni's history, as well as these higher risk periods. Now, where we are now is we had gone to a pretty major bottom down at about $5.6 back over here. And then we've been in an uptrend. Risk was kind of climbing along with it to a degree, but now it's really starting to move up. And with this, I would not be surprised at all to see a revisit to the top of the scale like we've seen a few times in the past. I really think this full scale is in play, so much more room is left to the upside for Uniswap to take advantage of if it wants to. And I do think this environment is conducive to that. Something that can tell us when this rally might be ready to get petering out or slowing down is our trend confidence indicator, or TCI. That's this orange line here. So this is something that basically tracks trend, as the name suggests, and it's supposed to be as much of a leading indicator as possible for trends. That's the way that you can look at it. And so basically you want to look at how the TCI is trending relative to price. If the TCI is trending up, then price will often follow. TCI starts moving down, price then will have some weakness, and so on and so forth. Really, when you see a change in the trend on the TCI, that often leads into a change in the trend of price. And you see that playing out over and over again. And then even here from the bottom, this aggressive reversal, price then moving up. And then even with this local weakening as we went into this sideways action, we then saw with this big pump a breakout of that. And so I would not be surprised at all to see this continue to the upside, start realizing more of this upside potential that exists for Uniswap. And it's only when this would then reverse again to the downside, maybe see something more like this, a more aggressive move to the downside, I might think that at least in the short term, that move is near its end and that we might need to take a break. So kind of in the middle of this range, there might be some shorter term volatility. We might be able to pick up on a lot of that with the TCI, something I'll be watching. This is certainly a great sign though. This breakout is a good sign. That is often a good buy signal. Not financial advice, of course. You should make your own opinions. But that's what I tend to look for when I look at this model. Okay, so the final thing I wanted to talk about in terms of our models for Uniswap was our forecast model. So this is predicting basically it's the probability of upside 6 months in the future. So the model, how confident is it that the price of Uni will be above where it is right now 6 months in the future? So in the last bull market, it was super bullish as we then went into this big pump. It then got really bearish, leading into what ultimately led into this big bear market, really getting bearish through here, and then down we went. But then getting bullish up kind of through this period as the price started to recover, start to move back up. And it still is bullish at 60% chance of upside, but it is moving down. And one thing to note about this, and I've talked about this before, is that a lot of data seems to suggest that we're moving into the later stages of the bull market. Now, it doesn't mean that substantial gains can't be had. Back over here, this was really getting to the end of the bull market. It was just very explosive. That could certainly happen again. But what this is just be telling us is that if we saw that and if this continued to trend down, it'd just be clear of what part of the cycle we're likely in. Could still be explosive to the upside, massive gains, but then it's probably not going to last all that long once you're up there before having a correction, a crash. That's just what happens with crypto. These big parabolic moves to the downside tend to be followed by nasty bear markets not too long after. And so this is suggesting that this accumulation range might be kind of at its end. We might be entering into a more explosive phase. Time will tell, but that's what I'm interpreting this as saying. Unless, of course, this reverses back to the upside, suggesting that maybe we have longer to run in this cycle. So something I'm going to be keeping an eye on for sure. But I think across the board, narratively, and what we're seeing with these models, certainly in the short to medium term, I think up makes a lot of sense for Uniswap. Sure, there's going to be volatility along the way. There are going to be sell-offs. There are going to be things that happen. But I just think that with an asset like Uniswap, that especially with the new opportunities that are afforded to it now that it didn't have before, having to worry so much about the SEC cracking down on it, now I think it's possible that Uniswap could stretch its legs more, that actually they might decide to change things about the token, share revenue from the protocol with token holders, for example. Who knows what else DeFi protocols could start doing with their tokens now they don't have to worry as much potentially about what the SEC might do in response. That could lead to massive appreciation because Uniswap has been an extremely successful protocol. It is the most successful exchange that has existed in crypto. It's, basically the OG exchange, decentralized exchange for Ethereum, but also branched out into other protocols as well. Really, if they are able to do more interesting things with the token, make it more appealing for investors, I don't see any reason why it couldn't see some nice appreciation in a bull market. We've already seen the early signs of that, and we'll have to see. Now, I don't expect it to go at the clip of 30% a day, but I do think a direction of up going from here makes a lot of sense. Now, normal caveats, of course, apply. If you have a recession, anything like that, then all bets are off. But short of anything like that happening, as long as this remains a constructive environment for risk assets, and certainly it seems like that so far, Bitcoin's setting new all-time high. Go take a look at the stock market, gapping up on the SP 500, new all-time high today. NASDAQ, new all-time high today. Dow Jones, new all-time high today. Russell 2000 shooting up, not quite all-time high, but getting very close. You see the picture. Risk assets are booming right now. If that continues, big if, and again, I'm not suggesting they do it at the same rate as what we're seeing here, but if that continues, I do think that things like Uniswap and frankly DeFi in general are set for a renaissance. DeFi has not performed well at all for a long time, but this might be a moment where actually it's ready to do some outperformance finally. So, not financial advice. You should make your own opinions. Obviously, the crypto markets are very complicated. You should make your own opinions. But these are the data I'm looking at. These are the ideas and the narratives that I'm looking at that are pointing in one direction that I think is fairly clear. Nothing is guaranteed, but this is one of the clearest stories that I've seen in a while, ever since we've just had this depressing down and then depressing sideways. It now seems like the table might be set for actually some sustained, meaningful upside for DeFi and frankly for alts generally. All right, if you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us over on X. A lot of updates from our models and more over there. And go to our website, PolarityDigital.io, to see live data from our models and more.